Alright, so in the last video we got cut off a little bit talking about this function. So this is our last example that we're going to talk through. If we were to have f of x equals 3 times e to the x minus 5. So I'm looking again just at what I'm starting with, and if I have a function with e to the power of x, I know that that's an exponential growth function, so I'm picturing what that looks like. It has a y-intercept at 1 and an asymptote at 0, and goes up from 0 and grows exponentially towards infinity like that. Okay, now if I look at these transformations, minus 5 on the outside, following our transformation rules, should bring us down 5. And then this 3 on the outside, since we're multiplying times 3, that's not going to be a translation or a shift. That's going to be a stretch by a factor of 3. So we're going to vertically stretch by a factor of 3 this graph, and then we're going to shift that down 5. Okay, so let's take a look at what that would do to our graph. Let's think about this stretch of 3. What would that do to our points here? So let's use our intercept as an example. Remember that if I just have e to the x, e to the power of 0 is 1, which is why our intercept is right here at 1. So if I have 3 times e to the x, let's pretend there's no minus 5 for now and just talk about the stretch. If I say 3 times e to the 0, e to the 0 is 1 times 3 would be 3. So my y-intercept now is not going to be at positive 1. It's going to stretch all the way up to positive 3. But my asymptote is still going to remain down here at 0, because as I plug in x values that are getting more and more negative, this would be getting smaller and smaller and approaching 0. So I would end up with something, if I just think about the stretch for right now, that looks like this. That comes from 0, passes through a y-intercept of 3, and then heads up to infinity. Okay, now we don't just have a stretch though, we also need to then take this, and we're going to take this function and shift it down 5. So let's take our asymptote, which is here at 0, and shift that down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's at negative 5 now. And let's take this y-intercept at 3 and shift it down 5 as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'd be at negative 2. So our graph will look something like this, coming from negative 5, passing through a y-intercept of negative 2, and growing exponentially. So that means, in terms of our domain, we're still reaching all the way from negative infinity to infinity for x. For our range, our floor is now at negative 5, so we're starting at negative 5 and then going all the way up to infinity. And for our end behavior, we've got our left hand side and our right hand side. And if we take a look at those, the left is headed towards our asymptote, so towards negative 5, and the right is headed up increasingly without bound towards infinity.